Morning, Jay. Big thanks for coming on the SMC Tribe podcast. Myself and Dunks, we're really looking forward to this one. Normally give a bit of a heads up to obviously who we go on a hot seat. See if I'm right here on a few of these. Former Royal Marine, obviously none of us served together, but owner of Blur, which is also big stadium. Probably one of the biggest tattooists in the sort of military sort of design world.
Seems to be that way. It's getting that way, working towards it, I guess.
Adventurer, you like that? Some cool adventures you've done along the way, and hopefully future sort of tech entrepreneur.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
That's the
kind of.
I try. I think in all of those things. Yeah. I'm trying at everything, and what comes off is was yet to be seen, or work in progress.
Also, both covered in your ink as well, mate.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll promote the business as well.
And obviously, quite pretty pertinent. I think you've tattooed quite a few of the sort of tribe of the SMC.
Yeah.
And our kind of tattoos.
That's thanks to you, though. No thanks to you, sort of putting it out there. And I do appreciate that.
I mean, we both big fans of your work, obviously, but and the sort of I suppose tattoos are sort of associated with tribes, Polynesian tribes, American Indians, and sort of sailor. We're obviously all ex-Navy, so obviously there's quite a few things I think we could probably chat about. Well, we normally start, mate, from the day you were born, mate. If you could just bring us back to that. If you want to go from your early upbringing, mate, where you come from, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sound well. From Bristol, which is fairly evident in my accent. It's not as bad as it potentially could be. I think that's down.
Yeah, you've toned it down over the years.
Yeah, I think it's down. I think military helps with that. My parents were also deaf. So both my dad was profoundly deaf. My mum's hard of hearing, so I didn't really get any accent from them. My mum was from Essex, and my dad was from Bristol. But as I said, you wouldn't.
I mean, that would have been some accent, wouldn't it? If you had a mix.
Yeah. But I had none really in that respect. So obviously, all of my accent really came from my surroundings. And I think as a result, I think it was fairly malleable. Because when I joined the Marines, I would come home, people said, "Why are you talking like that?" I didn't even realise I was talking any differently. I don't know what that is.
Pete's English when he goes back to work.
Yeah,
he's it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They almost kicked me out.
Yeah. That must have been different, mate. Obviously, growing up with two deaf parents.
Yeah, I think with life, you don't know what different is, do you?
Yeah.
You only by comparison when you see other people.
So did you sign from a young age?
You can sign before you can talk. Mentally. It's just the reason why you can't talk early is because your vocal cords haven't really formed.
Right.
Your esophagus or around your throat isn't really developed, but your brain, your understanding, in terms of trying to communicate. That's why they try and push it. So meet the parents and all that when you get to the kids' home. There's some truth to that. My signing now is terrible, but I think it's like a skills fade, isn't it? Because I was in a deaf. So growing up, I was like normal school and everything else like that. But family-wise, we'd always go away camping, like every 2-3 weeks. So my parents were part of different organisations, like there's 2 different like sort of national organisations, Deaf Caravan Company and all that. So we'd mix with other families that were deaf, and obviously all our parents' friends were deaf. So we were regularly sort of signing and in that environment. So it didn't really seem any different. Obviously you're aware from other people's reactions, but that there is difference.
Yeah.
But
I excuse my ignorance here. I take it like every word is a sign for us.
Effectively, yeah. I mean, sign is more universal than people realise. Obviously, there's regional variances within the UK. But I went to Thailand in like 2010. I think 2010 or 2011. I went to Thailand. I saw some Thais signing, and I went up and started talking to them because a lot of the words were very similar, and a lot of it's very descriptive. Like house, little things like that. Rabbit, you're visualizing something with your hands, and people pick it up.
There's slang words in sign.
Yeah, all sorts.
So like the Bristol slang.
Yeah, and northern and
right,
there's always different variances and stuff like that. But
I suppose it sinks a little bit when you say the word house, where people read a little bit, and when you describe it.
Yeah. So I think in some of the Nordic countries, I always remember because there used to be a program called See Here, which my parents used to watch, and it's just just deaf current events and stuff like that. And you have people talking, and I don't know where it was, Denmark or something like that, and they are like just non-emotion, just like robots. Yeah, I'm like, why are they doing that? It's just that's just their culture. That's the way they do it, And then you got the Americans who do a lot in one hand. That's why all these people get shot, don't they? Out in America, it's like gang signs, isn't it? So you had that's true. Like some deaf people have been because
deaf people getting shot.
Well, it's like an epidemic, but like I think there's been occasions where it's happened. You know what I mean? Because
terrible.
a lot of it, it's all one-handed.
That's terrible. You can't believe that.
Well, they can't hear you anyway.
Well, I got one for you. Somebody might fact check me on this.
Yeah.
Sure, I read before that apes can sign language.
Yeah.
But they could actually talk. They
Right.
just haven't got the voice.
Yeah.
The vocal cords. But
Not
they
seen
would if
Planet
they
of the
did.
Apes.
Yeah.
Well, I think obviously that happens.
No, but
doesn't
I think there's evidence of that. I mean, if we jump to the news tube now, we can find something along those lines. I think there was that gorilla, wasn't there, that was communicating.
Yeah,
and then
stories like that.
Yeah. It's like
That's our closest link, isn't it? The gorilla rather than
the
the
oboe.
chimpanzee?
Was it the oboe or
Yeah.
one? Not
I miss
No,
his
I
voice.
will.
Thinks I'm like a silverback, mate. But
yeah. I don't know. I don't know what. Yeah, I know. There's one of them. It's gone. Brian Cox covers it, I think, in one of them. Doesn't he? The closest link.
But
yeah.
you got sister, right? But
Sisters both hearing.
yeah.
we're
No,
both
you
hearing.
never had any issues. We all hearing.
No, I was quite worried. My son was born. I was
Right.
worried if it would skip a generation, but his hearing's fine. Or when it wants to be,
Yeah.
And then both kids are fine for their hearing. So it's, I mean, like I think the deaf community is like getting erased in some respect.
Yeah.
Because there's an answer to it.
Yeah.
You get a cochlear implant.
Yeah.
A Murph, like Murph, exactly, So, if you're a hearing family and you have a deaf child, previously you put them in. So my mum used to be a teaching assistant at the used to be called Elmford School for the Deaf in Bristol. Yeah. So you think they've got like a wider pool because obviously there's less deaf people, so they'd all sort of congregate around certain schools. So you probably send your child there because you'd want them to integrate, and learn in that environment. Well, you don't need to do that anymore. Yeah. I mean, and then I think they've dissolved it down now, so they have like deaf, they have like units within more mainstream schools. Yeah. I think again, this is like I haven't done any fact checking here, but I'm just thinking about how things move. Yeah. Like if my child was deaf, they'd have the cochlear implant. Because why wouldn't you want to afford your child?
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for Murph, but I mean, obviously his boy Harrison had surgery quite young.
Yeah.
And he had lived a normal life.
Exactly that. Yeah.
You never know how he speaks like fluently. Obviously not my place to talk about him, but he went to normal school, did everything. Like
exactly that. And like so that's So I think and not to shit on the on having that sort of disability, but you just want the best, don't you? The best opportunities that comes with that. But never really held me back. I didn't know any different. So my parents were deaf. On my father's side, his parents were hearing, but his brother was deaf. So both of them are deaf, and his brother was, I'd say, he was on the spectrum, like Asperger's. So he didn't really his communication was limited to like finger spelling. Right. He didn't really use like what's called BSL, which is British Sign Language. He never use that. You could communicate with him more or less like that, but you receive it back. And the best way to describe it is if someone wrote you a text with no spaces or punctuation. Okay. So I'll be like, and then I'm trying to work out my spelling. Yeah, I'm like that. Yeah. And you just sort of spell fast. So but he'd always be like that. So sometimes people say, well, what did he say? I don't know. I got a gist of it, but I couldn't tell you verbatim what he said, But where like my mum, she's hard of hearing, so you have a hearing aid, you have to hear. Not completely, but if you're in the shop, you could, if you talk slowly, she'd sort of pick up what you'd say. But my dad was profoundly deaf. But he was always quite involved with whatever I did. So football, he was always the dad that would take myself and other lads, right the way up. And boxing, he'd come along. And it's quite funny, actually. It's a random story, but so I started boxing at 15. Just sort of 15, turning 16, sort of last sort of year at school. And the boxing club's about half hour away from where I used to live in the city centre. I used to live sort of a little way out of Bristol. And he dropped me off. We trained. And then I think the following week he came down, he dropped us off, and then he came in early just to have a little look around or whatever, because it's a massive building. And Dennis, the owner, he got him, and then just was chatting to him or whatever else. And then I didn't think anything of it. And I spoke to my dad after, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've met Dennis. He's a really nice bloke. He took me upstairs to the pub and just sort of sat me down, because upstairs they had a skittle alley, and because it was joined with a rugby club.
Right.
So he says, took me up to the rugby club, and I had a beer and while I waited for you. I was like, "Oh right, yeah." And then like once I spoke to Dennis like a couple of weeks later, he was like, "Oh, that's your dad, is it?" He goes, "I thought they have a deaf Skittles team." He goes, "I thought he was in the wrong place." So I kept taking him upstairs. He came back down, so I took him back upstairs to the pub.
That's brilliant.
So he's like, there was like total miscommunication, but like,
That's funny.
no one thought like, anything other
quality.
from that. Yeah.
Quality. But boxing's been a big part of your life.
Yeah. So I played football for a bit, just, I think socially it's like, I never really loved football. I enjoyed playing it. It's a team sport. I like team sports, but boxing I got into 15, 16, and I just wanted to. I first started going out like on the piss or into town or whatever. And I was like 14, 15, and I was like, I'm in a man's environment now, and I think to say if there's someone with a problem, you can't say I'm a kid because you're in a pub. Like what are you doing in a pub? So you got to sort of. I just wanted to feel confident about being in any environment. So I went down, like found. So we're all going back now, but in the local newspaper, there was what turned to be one of my mates was in the paper, and it said, "Oh, boxing." I was like, "Oh, sound! I can find out the name of the boxing club." So I found one of the clubs named in the article. Got the yellow pages out, found it, rang them, said, "I want to come boxing." He said, "Oh, come down Monday night." So as I went down there, me and a couple of mates got dropped off. And my dad dropped me off, and that was it. And he dropped me off in, I don't know if you know Bristol, but like St. Paul's, sort of, it's in a city. It's
Bit rougher.
Bit rougher around the edges, yeah, definitely. So I got dropped off there, and then they said, "Oh," I said, "Where for the boxing?" I said, "Oh no, it's fully booked." I said, "Oh, I rang," and they said, "Oh well, yeah, there's a club over the road." So we literally, because I was like, we're like just a bunch of teenagers dropped off in the, we ain't from around here, so we didn't know what to do with ourselves for a couple of hours. So we went, all right, so we walked over the road. So it's over the other side of the motorway. So we went over the bridge. So got shown around, and then that was on the Monday. And they said, "Oh, Tuesday nights is beginners," and I've been there 26 years now. So
what year was that, mate?
Was it 26, 25 years? It was. Well, I was 15, so I got back around 2000. Yeah.
So who was the big boxer that? Who was the sort of? You must have followed a box at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky Hatton was like that was when I started following boxing. So into there, like Ricky Hatton was like sort of on, becoming in the big scene. Lennox Lewis as well. That was like Hasim Rahman. When around that era of
Kawasaki.
Yeah. I mean, I loved that at that stage. The light middleweight division was amazing. Yeah. Wayne Alexander, that Takaloo. There's loads of them. Yeah. But like as a domestic scene, that because I was in it then. I was getting all the magazines.
Planning like you're going to start fighting, and
I didn't know. So I went in there, and I as I say, I just wanted to learn to defend myself. We went down as a group of friends, and then we got shown around, and I seen some people sparring. I thought, I want to do that. Okay, that's that's where I want to sort of test myself. So I was learning. And then I sparred for the first time, and the lad actually ended up being a Marine. He wanted at the time, but he ended up joining via the reserves years later. But we sparred, and I was like, that was all right. What would I be like in a real fight? And so, I mean, I think I was training for about 7 weeks, and then started sparring, had that experience. And I was like, I want to see what it's about now. And then that was me. Then I trained for the year, and then I didn't end up fighting really. So I just turned 18, just because I was sort of trained for a couple of years. But I was turning up to shows. So I was turning up to shows because in this back in it, like boxing's so organised now, but back in the day it was so cuffed. You'd fight every week if you could. You just turn up to a show if there was someone there. You just bring your stuff, and so I did that for a while. I had a couple of bouts fall through.
Classes amateur fights, was it?
Amateur, just amateur. So it's like it's changed now. You've got England boxing, and you got the alliance. It's a bit like rugby league and unions. Right. There's been a split in terms of the organisations, but yeah, it was one at the time. So, arguably the sport was busier, so it was easier for that to happen. So I started boxing as an adult, really, as a junior / adult, really, 18. And my
so you fought an adult straight away, pretty much.
Yeah, more or less. That was it then. Yeah. So, I think my first fight was in Denmark because I wasn't because we missed out on a few fights. We went to a big box cup, so like there was guaranteed a fight then. So we went there, boxed. And I remember I was like, got in there and I was like, I just threw everything. I was watching. So there was like some good guys there from different clubs, and guys were just getting sparked out. And I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Got in there and I was this tall, rangy Dane. I think I fought, and he'd had like 5 fights. The bracket was 0 to 5. And I thought, it's all right, get in there. And I got in and I was throwing everything but the kitchen sink at him. His head was going back. I was like, and I got back into the corner after the first round, and Dennis was like, "Whoa, you're doing all right here." I was like, "Yeah, all right, yeah." Sounds. So like going out for the second round, I couldn't even hold my hands up. I think, and then I just got my head jabbed off. And then I think I lost like 15-2. Because back then it was computer scoring, so each. And I got. I think those 2 points were from the first round. And then and then I remember just like the hardest thing about this, like going into the third, was just trying to. I thought, how is it? These gloves aren't that heavy, but it's so impossible just to hold them up. There's a good little lesson there. We actually crashed on the way back. So Dennis crashed. He came off the motorway in Bruges. I got a big scar on my head. It was pretty gnarly. Yeah, just like no one was seriously hurt, but like I had like stitches in my head. Like one of the lads broke his nose and concussion, and then so that I didn't box them for a couple of months after that, and then had a few fights at the end of that season, and then it just sort of picked up.
How many fights did you end up having?
I think around 68. I was a 50-50 record, so like one. Yeah, I think it's more or less one either way. Of what I had. I boxed some good guys.
Did you do a pro fight in the end?
Pro fight, yeah. So I boxed.
You said that before.
Yeah. So when I left, I mean, I'll jump back a little bit. So I went to join the Marines earlier. At 18, I did the PRMC, got a joining date. And
what made you choose the Marines or even consider the military? Was there?
So again, jumping back even further, I did public services in college, and incidentally, what pulled me out of doing that is the car crash. Right. So I was doing public services. Initially, I wanted to be a police officer. So I thought I'd do this course and then sort of go through and go down that route. And then we had the visibility team come in, and they came out and they had a chat with us, and done the whole display, getting quick changes and all that.
What year was that?
Well, that was 2001.
Checking his maths all the time.
No, I'm just going to say.
2001. So obviously,
it would have been our generation.
On the old team, maybe.
Yeah, the whole sort of 99.9% need not apply sort of thing.
Best advert ever.
What's that?
Best advert ever.
Yeah, I think
it wasn't for the course.
I've quoted that wrong. It's 99.99%.
0.99%.
Yeah, I got that wrong. But I mean, I remember seeing. Because you remember you've been in cinema and you see the advert, and it was like intimidating. And they come in and did that, and then they said, "Who here thinks that?" They just said about the entrance test about pull-ups and press-ups and running, and they went, "Who here thinks they could do that?" And I thought, I could do that. And then there was like 70 people in a sort of like lecture room, and I was like sat near the front. And I went to put my hands up, and I turned around, no one had their hand up, and I thought, I don't want to be that one to stick around, in a new class in college. I thought, who's this guy?
Yeah.
So that planted the seed. And then I read a book about the paras and, a lad who was in the SAS, read about his sort of journey through, paras, pathfinders and SAS. And I thought, that looks hard. I want to do that. So I initially went down, I left college after the crash. I was like, I don't want to hang around in education for 2 years. I'm just going to go and do something, again, it's not like a life-changing experience, but I guess it was in some respects. So I went down to the careers office and I was like, I want to do the paras. I've done all the tests and that. And they're like, well, you can do all of these jobs and paras, you don't, is right at the bottom. what you want to do is be an aircraft technician, and you got bamboozled with better money, this, that, the other. So I started going down that route, and I was like, I've got no interest in any of these things. Got no interest in any of that, and obviously I had the seed planted from you know, the visibility team. Then I read Duncan Faulkner's First Into Action. Read that. And I'm going to do that. Yeah. I'm going to do that. And then applied, done the PRMC, passed, and I was like fit. You know, I was like, by that time, I was 18. I was
still boxing.
Yeah, I was boxing. You know, I was like when I just really started boxing. So I was like young and fit. You know, done the PRMC, fine, got a start date. And I thought, you know what? Because a lot of the guys in the boxing club I was at, we were boxing for the army, did all those things. But they'd had a bit more of experience. And I thought, I'd like to box for the Navy. I'd like to box for the Marines and the Navy. At the time, I had like 4 or 5 fights. I was like, I'm not really going to be looking for the team. I want to have more of a solid foundation, have some more experience boxing. And then I've got that as an avenue, if I choose to do that later down the line. And I remember chatting to, for whatever reason, I was back in my school. I spoke to my old PE teacher and said, nah, you're never going to go anywhere with boxing. It's so hard to do anything with it. You know, like, you should just join up. I was like, all right, we'll see how it pans out. And then, and then I didn't end up joining until, I think I was 21 when I actually finally ended up joining, because I went to join. It's another little bit of a chapter, but my old man passed away, had a heart attack, passed away. And then I sort of had to sort out all the affairs. Then went to join again. And then when I was in the process of joining again, I ruptured my ACL. They said, all right, wait out a year. And then... and
that's a long rehab injury, though.
Yeah. And then I didn't really rehab it properly. I was just young. You know, I think that helped that I was young, so it sort of got round it. And then I went to apply again with one of my best mates from the boxing team. We went to join her at the same time. And both did the fitness test. You know, they had like pre-joining fitness tests then, just to sort of stop wasting people's time at the PRMC. And he done it the week before. So I said, and he got the record. So like the local records, like, right, I want to beat him. So then I beat him. And then a week later, I got a letter saying, no, you're not medically fit to join. And basically the doctor just didn't want to risk it on behalf of my knee. So I had to do, I had to peel it basically. And that took a year. So and then in our boxing club, we got a bar, you know, not similar to this, loads of pictures up of all the boys and stuff. We got a few of our Marines pictures up, and we got both our pass out pictures, and they're same day, year apart. Really? Yeah. So he done 7. He done Herrick 7. I done Herrick 9. But he was doing Herrick 7 when I was going through training. Yeah. Yes. But so I've darted about a bit story wise.
They always do, you know, talk for hours about what the full history. How did you find training? Was that with, like, obviously you've had some injuries in the past? But
21 was all right. I think the only time you start sort of questioning any injuries is probably like, you know, mile 29. You know, the 30 miler. You know, I think everything else.
Life choices at mile 29.
Yeah, exactly. And I call it, just like when you're getting tattooed.
Yeah.
I call it last mile syndrome.
Hours,
Yeah. You're hanging out then.
He's normally bad from the start, though.
Yeah. Before he gets in, like,
gets in the seat.
Yeah, existential crisis in it at some point. You know, as you go through that, and but I I enjoy training. Yeah. I think I had a couple of little wobbles just sort of right towards the end, but I had some sort of personal stuff going on, which you know, family stuff that potentially got in the way, got in my head a bit. So I was you know, a section commander all the way through, but I didn't get a diamond. I think just because that it was the final X, and I just said, like, I've got too much going on. I don't care. I just need to get through training now. Like, that's my most important thing. I don't. You know, a diamond is an accolade. You know, when you look back, it doesn't really mean anything, does it? But at the time, it's massive.
He still talks about his numbers.
Yeah.
He hasn't mentioned it already.
It depends on what hour in the bar you're chatting about it. Like, but yeah, I remember saying early on in training, and I try and, you know, use this sort of thought process with everything I do, really. And I just said, I've got my green lid. I've just got to be here to the end to pick it up. So I've got it, you know, and then as a result, I don't, you know, I saw training as a formality for me to get what I wanted, you know, and as a result, it was all right. I mean, as I say, if I was 18, I don't think I'd have had that.
Yeah, we had that chat before. I wouldn't have got through at that age.
Yeah.
Just out where I was, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe physically be fine, but just mentally you weren't there.
I don't know. Maybe, I think you were still that same sort of character, that same. I know you might not be as mature, but you still had that not give up sort of thing. I don't know. I think I would have.
Yeah.
Like if you're that sort of person, I think you're almost. Obviously, some people can be nurtured.
Yeah, driven or whatever. Yeah. I think like with my old man passing and the things that went through it, I think that gave me a lot more sort of resilience, like emotional and mental resilience, which definitely helped.
Somebody told me before I joined, that, like a family member, that my dad had said, Pete won't get through. You won't be able to take the discipline. And I was so it stayed with me all the way through training as like a motivation. I remember asking my dad after, and he was like, "No, I never said that. I always thought you'd like. I always thought you'd get through." And but yeah, it's kind of whatever works for you, doesn't it? But they are like proper sliding door moments in those sort of thing. With I said recently on a podcast we did that as bad as it sounds, I almost took motivation when people were dropping off.
Yeah.
You're like. You start at 60.
Yeah, feel like you're the cream. You feel like you're the cream then, don't you?
Yeah, like 6 finish, and you're like,
fucking good bloke you are.
Yeah, I know.
Schadenfreude, isn't it? Yeah. That's the German in it, the old Schadenfreude.
Another one gone.
Sean German in that. Every podcast, mate, German rugby, we get it in there.
Yeah, I picked it up.
Yeah. So from training, mate, how did you enjoy your time? Obviously, I know you've done pretty rough Herricks and stuff, but
Herrick 9. I done Herrick 9. We were with 4-2 Commando, so I actually got sent to 40, and then they were going to send me to logs. They were like, who wants to go to Africa?
People go to die, mate.
We'll put our hands up, and they were like, yeah, you're going to logs. We're like fresh out the box.
Oh mate.
And then I was lucky, but I mean, you're never really lucky until you get to the end of it. But a group of lads that I was at 40 with. One of them was on 80, and the next day they said, who wants to go 4-2? And I was like, well, me. And now you're going to logs. Like base company sergeant major, because all the lads are away on Pothole. And so like, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then the group of lads, they spoke to their mate who was on AT, and then he swept the draft. So he took the logs draft. I went to, and I went to 4-2. And then, so I went out with K Company, and we're doing strike ups. When people ask me, I'm like, I'm an open book when I'm at work and stuff, especially young lads. I'm tackling young lads, and people are just interested in it. So I had a good tour, really. Very lucky. We were very lucky. I mean, we did lose lads. As a unit, we lost lads, but like as a company, we didn't. Lads got shot. And I had mates that obviously passed away, but I wasn't there. So I said, I'm, selfishly, it was, I don't hold any baggage really from any of that, because anything I did, from a personal standards point of view, I was happy how I conducted myself. The engagements we had, like it was anything between like just doing sort of like bit of reconnaissance going around and just sort of putting a footprint on the ground, for the British forces, pushing back flat and stuff. And then on top of that, getting into the, nuts and bolts of having actual firefights and stuff, it was enjoyable.
Enjoyable,
yeah, it is. Yeah, but I mean, like, and I said, like, I never did anything that I can't sleep at night. I only ever shot at people that shot at me, but down to the,
and they were wrong uns.
Yeah, and I had a discussion with one of my mates about it, and he said, "Well, look, you're in a. If people were in our country now, like with guns, like you probably fight against them. Yeah, probably would. But I said, majority of the people, I say most of the people we were fighting, they weren't Afghanis. So like you could apply the same argument to them. Yeah. Like so, and like I didn't have any ideological, real feelings about what we were doing. For me, it was like going back to boxing. All right, when I joined training, I knew that the end result is likely going into conflict, but my head's not there. My head's just getting the green lid.
Yeah, I think most people we were talking about this yesterday. Yeah. So actually, it's not like it's an anticlimax, but you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, now what then? Like you don't really think about the realities of the job. You're like,
that's life. Yeah. It's what some people live on a high forever, don't they? They'll hold on to that one achievement, and that'll be their thing. forever, and that's fine. That's up to them. But for me, it just opens the door. You just opens the door to a bigger room, don't you? Yeah. So when I remember going through training, and then it wasn't really, when they're talking about the different job roles, I didn't really care about any of that. I just wanted my green lid. And then I remember doing live firing sort of towards the end of training. I was like, what would it be like if someone's firing back? And then I'm like, I want to test myself in that environment. So that's why I was so keen to go to, go into theatre, because I wanted to know how am I going to be when I'm up against it.
I suppose members of the public will see it differently when they work, but it's like lads, you're training for that job, and you're a product for the government in a sense, but it's like training for a football game and never actually playing a football game.
Yeah,
it's what everyone really why they joined up. Well, I think most, I didn't really say it when I chatted yesterday, but most Marines or paras a lot of time are interested in being special forces.
Yeah,
and because why you've been, why you're attracted to do that. Yeah, and you're attracted to go away and do and to do an op. That's what you want to do. Is dangerous, and obviously the consequences are bad for for lots of lads who who didn't come back. But it's I think lads who joined up who never went away.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Do you know what thing? I see lads that have left. Number of years ago. They come into me, and I've got lads who are some lads who have come to me prior to joining. And joined. I've had lads that come to me and been badged in the process of me tattooing them, and some guys that have joined and left and never did anything, and they're like, I wouldn't say resentful, but they feel like they've not really achieved anything. I'm like, but like as a father now, I'm like, we don't want any of these conflicts, you careful what you wish for, so
I have this chat and I'm all the time going, I'd love my boy to join up, because I love my experience of it, and it didn't end how I want it to end, but I loved what helped me, it changed who I was and all that stuff, and I'd love that for him. But on the second hand, like, you don't want him to do it, he probably won't want to do it, but I'd be shitting myself if he went away anywhere.
And I mean, I don't know what experience you have, but the memorial garden when you get back, and the parents, horrendous, isn't it? So I think I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to be in that position. It's hard, isn't it? You just got to let everyone have their own journey. And I think when I initially wanted to join, my dad didn't want me to join. My mum was indifferent, I think. And I think that's probably why, because that fear and obviously, with I've got no military background in the family, because all the parents would, like on my mum's side. So jumping back a bit, my mum's parents were both deaf. Right. I think like my nan, she done something in terms of during the Blitz and all that sort of stuff, helping. She was helping people. And, she was young. She was young at that time, but she was she's got some sort of. I think she got a medal. Sort of community type sort of medical for helping out back then, but outside of that, there was nothing really, family wise to steer me in that direction.
I take it, obviously once you'd done your tour, did you see it like, I've climbed that mountain now, I want to do something else, or did you not? Why didn't you have a full career?
So literally the day of the last op, when we were handing our kit in. Sergeant Major was like, get cracking on your VP, you're going 6. And I was like,
that's enough to send.
Choose a draft.
Tried to do that to me, man. I've managed to flip it.
So I mean, in all fairness, I went to go into I put a draft in put a request in for the visibility team, because that's what got me into it, and I find it quite inspiring.
It's a good fun job, that, mate.
Yeah, and I was into my sport and stuff as well, and I'd done my tour. I still wanted to continue to soldier, but doing visibility team doesn't take you away from being a soldier. It's a short draft, isn't it?
It's like the
little Christian,
a dating team.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It's a polite way of putting it.
But like Sergeant Major at times at ML, and I think, I don't know, it's got a bit of a bee in his bonnet. I was sort of jumping around to try and get out of it, just like I did with the logs draft. What I did is made a load of posters and put some big-breasted tattoo chick in it, and put swingers party, and then now I've got your attention. Who wants a S3 draft? Like, who wants to swap an S3 draft? Put it all over 4-2. I don't think I made any friends with that because like catfish loads of people into looking at it, and then so unfortunately no one took the draft off me. So we did the draft. Did the course, but I came third in the course, which was the highest of the non-volunteers. Really? And as a result, like the draftee, like he. Remember, at the end, your little presentation. He said, "Oh, good effort, especially that you didn't want to be here, And then, I ended up. So I went down to the Com Squadron, and then because I picked there, so I thought, well, if I'm gonna be 6, I'm definitely gonna go and box now for a little bit. So got me, and I'd had enough experience by then. So I I got in touch with the Navy boxing coach, who was a Matlow at the time. And I initially called him before the 6 course to try and get out of it. I was like, no, you got to do your training. Yeah, I was all over it, but yeah, it didn't work.
You're not really good.
Yeah. But he said, look, do your course, and then we'll have you after that. So I went down to Com Squadron because I knew they had a big pool of blokes. Yeah. Where if I went to a fighting unit, the likelihood is you're not gonna have time. I was in the cycle then. I'll be going back out, and lads did. Lads. One of the lads, Anthony Hotine, he was keen to get back out as soon as possible, and he called it up. He never come back. So, it's what you say. You're lucky until you're not lucky, aren't you? So, so I managed to get a draft down there, and then went down and done 6 months on the team. And then funny enough, I was on the team with my mate Greg, who I went to join up with, and we're just thick as thieves down in Portsmouth, and that was good. A real good experience. And then he was on the sports presentation team at the time. Yeah,
that's why I was on that.
Yesterday as well. Yeah, and he'd been on there for over 2 years now, and they're like, mate, they've got to ping someone. They've got to ping someone to do this job because there isn't anyone that fits the description. So they wanted someone who'd done a tour and had boxed for the Navy, and there wasn't anyone. I was the only person that could fill that. So spoke with his boss, and then he spoke with the draftee who remembered me. And then I got put onto that then, and then I was a tracksuit soldier for a little bit. Then I don't really, I ain't got any problems with that. I got a medal for going there, so I've done it. So I've been away. It wasn't like I'd dodged actually doing the job wrong. So I went and so I had 6 months there, 6 months doing sports presentation stuff. I went back on the team for 6 months, and then it was around that time I think I saw one of my mates who was leaving. So he was in the troop behind me in training. We become friends. He was done at 4-2 as well, and he was leaving to go and join Solace to do maritime. And I was like, mate, so I was core pissed. I was like lined up to do my PTI acquaint. Juniors was lined up as well. So like everything was going sort of well for me, and I loved being in the corps. And then I saw him on his orderly room. I said, "Oh mate, just give me a shout. When you're outside, it'd be good to catch up." And then I didn't hear from him for a few months, and I think it was like Easter leave, and I was like, just been paid, just gone on leave, and it was like Saturday morning, and I looked at my overdraft, overdrawn already, and I was like, oh Christ. Yeah. And then he's rang me up, and I was like, oh wait, I said, I was Civvy Street, just sort of just trying to wind him up a bit. And he was like, yeah, no, I'm rich, mate. I was like, yeah, all right. No, I've been away for 3 weeks, just got paid $9,000. And I went, right. And then through that week, me and one of my other mates, who's still in incidentally, we started making a plan. I was like, right, okay. So what we'll do is we'll put our chits in, we'll go and do this maritime. And then I was like, and at the time I was single, so I was like, I'm going to join the Aussies. Go and join the Aussie Commandos, because I still want to do that sort of thing. I thought I've got an opportunity to sort of change my life. I can earn some money in the interim, and then go there. They pay well, and then I've got no ties here, so I can just start again down under. Really, I went through that process and applied, but I just got knocked back. And at the time I applied, they weren't heavily recruiting. I'm not heavily recruiting from the UK now, but there wasn't really. The avenues, it was just like one telephone number. It's like one office in Australia, which was, I was trying to push the application, see what was going on with it. And they said, yeah, no, I just got an email back, you've not been accepted. But around that time, life sort of just changed. And so going back to boxing, so this is around the time I left, and I was doing the maritime at the time, and then I was like, well, I want to give again. I was like, I want to just do it. I don't want to be the bloke at the end of the bar. I said, I could have done this. Yeah. I could have done that. I don't mind doing anything and failing, because I can attest to how hard it is to do that thing then. And I say, look, I tried. Yeah. Fair play to anyone who's done it, because that is nails, you know? So I said, and a lot of the time, at that time, quite a few of my friends had turned pro and stuff like that. So I was like, I'll turn pro then. You know, I'm going to turn pro. I'm going to have 4 fights or 1 year, you know, whatever comes first. Because at the time, the ABA said, if you have less than 5 fights, you can turn back amateur. Oh, right. And the whole thing for me, because I could see it from the point of view from seeing our friends, lower level domestic professional boxing is hard work. You know, you're working for less than minimum wage because you're training for like 3 months plus. You know, and then you got to sell all the tickets. So and all the while, unless you get like a decent sponsorship, you know, most of the time it's gonna be friends who sponsor you. You know, because unless you're a massive prospect. But if you're a massive prospect, you don't need to sell tickets.
All the money's weighted at the top end.
Oh, yeah. Massive, so, yeah, you know, with a lot of stuff. But it's just the way it is. So, you know, I see now everyone, so you've got to sell your soul to sell, you know, to get these tickets out there. And obviously, you know, we're all, as a group of friends, we all share the same groups of friends. So it's even harder to, you've got to push that flat, it's the wrong term, but, you know, push the edges of your friendship groups to get people to come and watch you and support you.
Well, some fighters actually cost their money.
Yeah,
you know, just to fight. You know, they buy in their own tickets.
Exactly, and more or less. So, you know, like my sort of thing was, I don't want to do this long term. You know, like I'm not interested in sort of. I just want to have that experience. So I was like, right, well, what I'm going to do at the same time, which it was a sort of a thing where I could help myself and help someone else. So I was like, I linked up with the RMA and the Royal Women's Charity. I said, look, you know, I'm going to raise money for you, you know, by boxing. So if you buy whatever proceeds I get, 50% is going to the charity. And then, you know, I mean, what little money I had, you know, it doesn't really matter. I was working at the time anyway, so to be honest, it didn't really worry me.
Maritime.
Maritime, and then around that time I was doing maritime, and then so I sort of transitioned because when it started to take a little bit of a downturn, not really, it wasn't even really. It was sort of prior to that. I was coming home and I had money in my pocket, and it just burned a hole in my pocket, you know, because I had no responsibility at the time. Yeah. So I was going away, and I was chatting to one of my mates, and at the time he was doing sort of youth support work, so working with like kids with challenging behaviour that were leaving the care system. So they were put up in accommodation provided by. So it's a private company, but they were taking funds from the local authority to house these kids. Not really kids; they were young adults. They were like 16 to 19, sometimes older, but just depends on what the local authority, you know, sort of deemed fit. And then some of them would have like 3 hours care a day just to make sure they're on track. You know, try and encourage them to keep their house clean and look after themselves and try and get a job. And then others needed 24-hour care, and then others needed 2 to 1 care because of allegations, or they were violent. They had like youth offending orders. So, but he was doing that, and it paid all right. So when I was back, I could do 2 or 3 days work, and you'd be on the bounce. I could do 2 days on the bounce, and that was, you know. And then with the time I'd take him to the gym, you know, I was like quite proactive in engaging with them, and I generally had a good rapport with most of them as a result of that, you know, and did good things with a few of them. And so I was doing those 2 jobs as well as, you know, training for the pro stuff. Had the 1 fight, and it was close. Because I said to my coach at the time, I said, look, I don't want someone I'm going to just bang out, you know, like how am I going to figure out? It's not real experience.
That's what I would have picked.
Bit easy for it.
I take this as about 2012-ish, is this at the time?
Let me think. Yeah, it was 2012.
A bad guess, was it?
Yeah, it was 2012. And then, so I said, I want someone with a 50-50 record or their first pro fight, because then it's real, isn't it? You know, because they want to win. They're not there just to pick up the money at the end of the day or whatever else, or just run away from me for the fight. I want and it was mad because the referee was actually my the Navy coach's old man. Yeah, because he's probably still doing it now. Professional judge and referee. But I spoke to him about it after the fight. That it didn't have any bearing on the fight, but. First round gone in there. I mean, I tell you, like, so I got the RMC,
vest
shirt on, and I remember, like, I'd never felt it's the same thing. It's the same thing having a fight there. It's just the stakes in your head, isn't it? And I remember walking out and seeing everyone so amped up, and I felt so much more pressure than I'd ever felt because I'd had all these people who've invested in you, haven't they? They've all paid the money for the ticket.
Yeah,
I mean, not amateur show, it's a tennis going and watch. They'll come if they want, whatever. But they've all come. And then not even the people that have bought tickets for you, but you also know loads of other people in the crowd. I remember going out and seeing one of the lads I know was like, really emotional. And I was like, and I was like, a lot of pressure, And then got in, and then first round, I was putting it on him, and I caught with a body shot, some nice shots. And I thought, I've hurt him there. But there's a little bit in me, going back to that first fight, I thought, save something for the last round. Because if you don't get rid of him, you don't get rid of him, then, you got a hard night's work. So I sort of won the first round, won the second round, started to tire then. Third round, I drew. And then the last round, I lost. Because I found, I know there was, so with domestic fighting, if it's two, I think it's two English, two British fighters, then the referee is the sole judge. And I mean, coming towards the end, I thought...
should have been all right, though, if he, like...
Well, he didn't know till after. Yeah, he didn't know till after. After I said, I know Stu and this, that, the other. We had a little chat after. He goes, I thought you were going to get rid of him in the first round. Yeah. And I thought, it's a bit worried, And I think, like, then a little bit goes back to that. And then I think as time's gone by, and... and you see, when we chat, but we obviously watched, we watched some fighting together and talked about fighting in the past. I think if I'm honest with myself, I knowing how far I'd go as a professional, regional level, if I'm being honest, I think, because I'm tricky enough, skill wise, strong enough, to hold my own, but I'd never had that killer instinct, I think I see people, I stopped plenty of people, in my amateur career, but I never jumped up on the ropes. Sometimes I was embarrassed. I'd stop them and go, well, that was easy.
Sorry, mate.
And I think, when you look at these upper echelons of combat sports, these people thrive on it. And don't get me wrong, I love jiu-jitsu. Now I'm doing it, and I love boxing. But I don't take pleasure from hurting anyone, and I think that makes it different. And having, like, I don't have the confidence to go, I'm going out with my shield. I'm going to give everything. I'd rather win, or survive. I don't want to be all or nothing, in that scenario. And I think that's me being completely honest with myself. But time and experience has allowed me to, being honest with myself, to look at that.
So you didn't have any more fights after that? Or
it's never happened. I think, because it's quite a cutthroat industry, the professional boxing, and there's another big promoter in Bristol, and a number of times there were shows that would get put on, and then we'd get seen off because they put on a show at the same time, and then we start a show, and then money would fall through, or the venue would fall through. So that 1 year, that 4 fights 1 year turned into like one fight 1 year. So I was like, I just turned amateur then, and then I was like, I don't feel like still like to have a little bit more of that experience. So paid for my medical for another year. And a couple of things happened, shows fell through, and I just thought, what, I just chalk that up.
Park it for now. So when did the tattooing start, mate? Obviously you had an interest in art.
Yeah, so that was 2014. It'd be 11 years, November this year. So
taking you were good at art before this point.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed it. I was good. In school I was quite good at it, but I didn't go down the art route because it was art or PE, and I thought, why would I do less PE? I just. Yeah,
I had to get my school to change, allow me to do, because it was on the same.
Yeah,
I liked art and PE. they let me drop a language, which was terrible
Okay.
now. So I didn't do languages at school,
Yeah.
which was like, you're not allowed to do that now.
Yeah.
But just to let me do both.
Yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity, I would have probably done that, but who knows where I would have ended up, you know, because the route has taken me here, so I'm quite content with how things played out. But so I never did anything formally with art that ever really. Then
do you still draw on that when you're in the core? Do you mess about?
Yeah. So that was I was on the boxing team because like when we were fully in it training, like we didn't want to go out on the piss or anything. So I bought like watercolors and sketching. You know, I was always sketching just to occupy myself in the evenings, or like when we go and we were doing sparring, and I'd have little sketchbooks. And I mean, look, it's the stuff I was doing was dog shit, really. You know, compared to what I'm doing now, but it was keeping my sort of foot in the water, I guess. And
so how do you when you want to be a tattooist, I presume you have to go and find somebody to be an apprentice.
Yeah, so again, I'm quite fortuitous really, because I started getting tattooed. So around the time of the marathon, money burning a hole in my pocket, I was like, I'm gonna get tattooed now, right? So
did you have any at this point?
I had a couple. Yeah, I had a couple, just on my chest and back and stuff, but nothing too visible. And then I started getting my ribs done and my arm done. And so my arm, I got done in the same studio where I work out of now. So, you know, found the artist, and Dan, who's my business partner at the time, he really wanted to get into the industry for a number of years. He wanted to go down that route, but didn't know how to get into it. One of the guys that had tattooed most people we knew, he was like, I'm not teaching anyone but my son. You know, because it was quite a closed community then, because, you know, there's a lot of gatekeeping, because they don't want too many tattoo artists, because what we got, like, any industry in it, you know. So they sort of kept it that way. And then so what Dan was doing is he was just going, whenever he was either getting tattooed himself, or like if I was getting tattooed, he goes, I'll come and watch. And I got tattooed by some decent artists as well. So he was like, perfect. So he's got front seat to see how they do it, whether they share the information or not. You can look at it. So when I was getting my arm done, he started chatting to Martin, who was doing it at the time, and Martin was like, well, why are you here watching? And he went, well, I want to get into the industry, like. And he said, well, I've got an apprentice, but if you want to tattoo, you can tattoo for me. I'd rather you tattoo someone here in the studio than tattoo in your bedroom or whatever. And Dan, I don't think he had any intention of doing that, but, you know, he was like, all right, so brought his dad in later that week and tattooed him, and then started tattooing me and all our other friends. So that was his step into the, you know, his foot into the door. And then I was friendly with the studio then, so I'd pop in and see Dan. Either get tattooed by him or, get tattooed by Martin. You know, because that was his place to work. We go in and see him, just like people pop in to see me. You know,
do you charge people at this early point in?
I mean, you know, it's one of them. You like, so he was doing that when we were paying him, and like, so like, I mean, from Martin, it's obviously how he's building his clientele without too much pressure, you know, because he's got someone in, and if he doesn't last, it doesn't matter. He's not really invested in it. But Dan was, you know, he was astute. He was asking questions, watching. You know, whenever he went tattooing, he was watching.
I bet your tattoos look from the early days compared to
now. Yeah.
I bet there must be like, is it people out there with like, I don't know, a face of Michael Jackson? He looks like somebody.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not too bad. I mean, I'm probably a little bit more lucky than Dan in respect that, because Dan had that, and the shop got busier and busier, and then they were looking at opening another studio, so they were looking for an apprentice, and Martin asked Dan, said, "Oh, do you know anyone who would be a good fit?" And he said, "Well, Jay would, he's into his art, he's getting tattooed, he likes tattooing."
They pay you at that point as an apprentice, or do you just get paid if you start tattooing?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's different. Because I mean, some places would say they want, you know, you're going to pay. You've got to pay.
You've got to pay them.
You got to pay them for the opportunity. You know, other times you give a percentage. You know, I mean, at the start, you're tapping people for nothing.
Yeah.
But the idea is, you you get a drink out of it. Like, you know, even just cover, like, even it's 20 quid to cover the materials. You know, so I just say to people, if I was tattooing them, I said, look, you know, if it's friends and stuff, I said, just give Martin 40 quid. You know, because I just wanted to learn. I didn't really need the money, and I was so at the time I got into it. I was with my wife now. We had a mortgage, you know, so like I couldn't just be there 5 days a week. I had to earn money. So I was at that time I dropped off the maritime and then was doing the youth support work sort of 2-3 days a week. I'd be down the studio the other sort of 2-3 days and then have a day off.
Oh, that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and it worked out. I mean, it did mean that, you know, arguably, I think my learning process would have probably been sped up if I was a little bit more like Dan. But you know, at that point, it wasn't. Well, I wasn't able to do that. So it worked out. You know, I'm here now, and it worked out. I think my learning curve could have been a little bit steeper.
Are you learning more from actually tattooing then, rather than watching someone and how they, you know, how they.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them. Like, you can watch so much. I mean, like I still enjoy getting tattooed to watch. When you get tattooed, you can watch the process.
That's what I'm like with you, know. I'm mega interested.
Yeah. So you watch the process, and then like, especially, I mean, I see it from you get to see it from the customer's perspective about how, you know, what hurts and this, that, the other. Some people will work in a certain way, and I think, God, that fucking kills. Like, you know, going like maybe you'll do a little bit, dart back, and then all you're doing is just agitating the whole area, which in the end result will be the same, you know, arguably, but.
So it always blows my mind seeing, you know, some skin goes red. How you know, you went, well, I know what that's going to look like. When it's not red, like it'll be that shade. And stuff like, you know, that can only come with time and
only
skill.
Time,
right?
Yeah. Because what happens generally is, you know, you have two things, you know, with early tattoo artists is like they'll do everything too dark because they feel they'll need to, like, why is there empty skin? Yeah. There shouldn't be empty skin, but you know, you see good tattoos, they use a lot of that use of empty space and using like the canvas effectively, you know, build it and having the contrast in the right places.
My art teacher used to say, don't be scared of white space. That's always a thing. People
and it's the same with that. So that comes with time. You see something, you think, oh, there's nothing on, so you got to just trust the reference, or you got to look at the reference and go like, well, I know that's not going to look the same on the skin, so I'm going to have to make something darker to give that longevity, you know, as a tattoo. So that comes with experience as well. Yeah. Or like when people are starting, they do it all too light because the skin goes red. Yeah. They get too scared to go too dark and more in the tattoo. And then you see loads of people with like washed out really light grey tattoos, like sleeves and stuff. It's because people are they're not using black enough, you know, to build that contrast with longevity and, you know. Yeah,
fascinates me the whole world because it's art, but it does fascinate. So before we move on to what you're doing now, mate, just tell us for the audience where you work, where the studio is, just a little bit of plug.
Yeah. So I mean, where we started was Avon Tattoo, and then there was a change in the business. Martin wanted to move closer to where he lived, so Dan and I sort of struck up a business partnership. We took over the lease, and it's Avonmouth in Bristol. So we're really lucky because I say if I was like, you know, living in like West Wales, I wouldn't be as busy. Where I live on like, you know, the M4, M5 corridor. It's perfect for me, especially with the military stuff. You know, so people.
Probably our topmost 20 regular calls of on our phone have been tattooed by you.
Yeah.
Describe to people, I suppose, what your style is then, what your sort of style of tattooing is.
Yeah. I mean, I like to take on everything because I like. Because you never know, you know, you're always like having a bit of fear. So I like, you know, I've started doing a bit more colour work recently.
I've noticed a bit more colour work.
Yeah, but like I do black and grey realism. That's my sort of bread and butter.
You say military, like some of your military ones, maybe.
More, yeah. More. I mean, the beauty of doing black and grey realism is you can apply that to anything. But when it comes to themes, I do a lot of military stuff because a lot of military people come through.
World War I stuff is some of the ones you
I enjoy it. And I think I'm quite lucky as well in respect to a lot of the imagery. You know, it's that the harsh sort of black and white images, they translate well to a tattoo, especially because there is that sort of sentimental aspect to it as well. It's not just a picture, you know, that means
something.
Yeah, that's a picture of time, isn't it, on someone?
Yours look like 3-dimensional, don't they?
Yeah,
you know, of like sort of...
And that comes down to, you know, the just understanding. You know, the sort of getting the depth and contrast, you know, and applying. So it's just applying those things to anything. But the fact that a lot of the military history stuff, you know, I enjoy it. Yeah. I enjoy it, you know, and it means a lot to a lot of people as well. I mean, I've done a couple of tattoos of people's grandparents, you know, photographs of them. So one of the sleeves I've done is. One of the chaps, he's not military himself, but he's got a military sleeve sort of dedicated to his granddad and everything else. And I've got a picture of his because they helped evacuate a wounded soldier, and it's a picture of them actually evacuating the guy.
Well, I suppose the original tattooing is storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. I like to, especially when people come to me like from the military, and they're like unsure. They want to sort of nod to their military background, and I always say it's tapestry, like, and even bad tattoos are they're it's like it's a photograph, like it's almost like a photograph for that time of, I mean, for some people it's a bad photograph and they want to get rid of it because it reminds them of a bad time, but. When you get silly tattoos, I'm like, when it comes to cover-ups. But when it comes to like, I say, try and think outside the box, about some of the jobs they've done. It doesn't need to be a direct thing, it can be anything that reminds them of an experience, whether it be, one of the guys used to be Ops Samson, so we got different passport stamps on him and stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, just we like, it's good to try and explore these ideas with the customer, because I'll have ideas, but I can have 1,000 ideas. It's got to be relevant to the individual. So if they give me something to like some seeds to work off of,
are you still like the worst customer that turns up and doesn't know what he wants?
Nah, but it's good. But he has what he gets as well. So it swings and roundabouts.
That's how much I trust your artwork.
Yeah, that's good. And I have there's difference. So some people. So when I there's sort of design processes is I wouldn't say it's the last minute, but I do it the week of, unless like we've got like a good idea of an overwhelming theme, I can put some loose things together for say a sleeve. But if some of those ideas are still in the air, then we'll leave it. But how I tattoo, I try and leave the door open.
I find it interesting how sort of culture sort of changed of like tattooing of like what's acceptable now or what's kind of it's much more broader now, isn't it? Like you got like sort of sailors or like outcasts or like bikers. It used to be kind of, and you'd have, obviously tattooing is a lot better now. Like, it's like artists, it's like proper real artists, isn't it? And but the amount of people now with tattoos, it's just like I was with my brother a while ago, and he went, look at this pub, and he went like every single person who's got like a tattoo. We just sort of like looking around, kind of where.
My nan had tattoos. Great nan. She's
no one in my family had them. None in my family had them. And then
my dad didn't talk to me for a week, mate, when I had my first one.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, but I'd say to people now is like the people that give the jobs have got tattoos. You go back 10, 15 years, it was a different thing.
Say again, sorry.
The people that give the jobs, the people that are running companies, the people that are, or sitting under that generation, that are, more people facing. They're the ones that they got a lot of them got tattoos, because it's more widespread in society. There's less taboo about it. I mean, there's still mental stuff like getting your eyeballs and getting your face done, but for the best part, there's no. And I think now, people are, due to anti-discrimination, like
I take it. Sometimes must have been tattoos you've gone no.
Not really. I'm again. I guess it depends. I was talking about this. Maybe last week, if I was on Blackpool Seafront or Magaluf Strip, I'd have a load of those because a lot of those come from bad ideas when people are drinking. Yeah. If you've got to wait, or and normally when
think about it.
And waiting months. Yeah,
and people don't generally walk. We do have people coming off the street, local people, but not many. Or if people come in, they've normally messaged ahead of time to have a chat. But most of the time, we'll have like a interaction on social media or email. I outline, my sort of booking process and let them know the sort of wait time. And for a lot of people, that will, sometimes that's the end of the conversation. I let them know, how much the tattoo costs and when they can expect to get it, and I don't hear back. So I'm less likely to get people who want something mental, because normally, a lot of those decisions are on a stag do, those sort of mad ones.
Any famous people, mate, you've tattooed over the years?
You too?
Yeah, famous podcasters.
Yeah. Nah, not really. Not really.
Anyone you want to then? Any thought I wouldn't mind tattooing?
You do the expos, don't you? Sometimes the
do the conventions and stuff. I'm not too worried. I think like that almost comes into to use like a sort of modern term of like clout chasing. Yeah. I wouldn't want to just tattoo someone because they're famous. The people that come to me, I'm blessed really in the sense that I love coming to work. You know, I love going to work. I love going to work and I love coming home. You know, like, so I love both sort of transitions of that. And everyone we've got in the studio is sound. I mean,
it's like a day of therapy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's really cool. You know, you see people, and you see them over years as well.
Yeah.
You know, like me and my customers, and then everyone else in theirs.
Yeah.
Well, Dunks just said, I generally like look forward to that day.
Yeah.
Like, it is like a day of therapy where we have deep conversations about 9/11 and
Yeah.
pyramids.
It's
and,
just in the last few hours, mate.
And
Yeah.
the last couple of hours, and what, you know, normally watch a film and that, but yeah, you've kind of ours is very much now, especially obviously you've got a lot of mates you tattoo, but it's a bit like a day out, like a social day out as well. It's not just a tattooist, she's just not saying anything.
And for a lot of people, they just, you know, and different people from different walks of life as well. And, you know, some people have quite high pressure jobs and stuff, and they're like, I don't have to do anything today. You know, like, you know, and like when I've got tattooed, I just think like, I maybe in the past, but I've had enough tattoos now just to be like almost zen about it. I'm like, I'm getting tattooed today. I'm like, well, it is what it is. You're just like doing jiu-jitsu. You're present at that moment. You can't be anywhere else
No.
other than in that chair when you're getting tattooed. Yeah. So like the best way to almost distract yourself, to try and not pull yourself out of it, but is to communicate and be aware of your environment. So you just, I think, you know,
and watch 80s films.
Yeah.
It's like anything. I think the pain bit of it, a bit like when you have to do something hard, and the end of it,
payoff.
That's the payoff.
Yeah,
like
payoff.
You want it to be a bit. It's uncomfortable, but you know you're going to be the end result's quality.
It's
like anything in life.
Well, I mean, therein says the difference with how you get
how we both sit. The guy who takes the tramadol and
I remember that one on my back. Remember before? My back. Like I remember I'd like.
He's tapped out.
Never. We've
had a few short sessions.
We've agreed where we're like we should maybe finish it.
I like as a tattoo artist, I can bend time. So like 5 minutes is 5 hours, or like 5 hours. 5 minutes.
It flies by, and then suddenly it's like, oh god, it's only a minute.
Yeah.
The minutes are going slow here now.
It was only that 1 minute when it was low down my back, and I remember I was counting the seconds. So like I think, right, you dip his ink, that would be 3. And then I'd have
that is probably the worst way to do it.
And then
it's like looking at a clock. Right?
Then he would go 9 seconds on my back, then he would dip again. I'd be like, 3.
Yeah, that's probably the worst way to go about it. But I know your brain goes into all sorts of. It's a fascinating experience, isn't it?
It's good, mate. I enjoy it.
Do you mind if I take a call, Pete? No, mate, take a call.
Yeah,
yeah.
My customer yesterday, I had 2 customers in this week over 2 days. So I've done 4 days, but I dropped down to 3 days now. Which
mate, them ones this week, mate, brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
I absolutely love that one.
Thank you. And he was struggling on both days. The lad, and I think he had a little bit of anxiety about coming and getting tattooed anyway. And at the end, I was like, "Yeah, look, I know it hurts you, but I got to get on with it. And if I'm too nice to you, I'm just making it longer and more painful. You know, it's better I just sort of focus on what it is I got to do, and you're going to be you're not going to remember.
Yeah,
you know, you might have a little bit of a memory, and then in years to come, you're not going to remember that little bit of pain. You're just going to be happy with the tattoo you got. So that's the mentality I got to take on.
Just for the public, I suppose. You seem to do Greek mythology quite a lot. Just a bit of Japanese as well.
Yeah, I'll take going back. I'll take what, you know, for the best part. You know, if I feel I can do a good job of it, I'll take it on. So I've done like I'll even do tribal stuff where some people would turn their nose up at it. But like if that's what the customer wants and they want me to do it, and I feel I can do it, I'll take it on. And sometimes doing those things, because I like, again, you want to feel challenged. You know, like I like doing jiu-jitsu because I've transitioned from boxing to jiu-jitsu now because I like you're learning something new and you get a bit of fear. Like, am I going to be able to do this?
And because we're old.
Yeah.
Younger than
that's it. Yeah, I mean, in respects to that, but I just like I like to push myself. So I will take on anything. That's the bread and butter of what I do. But I like I said, I will be doing more colour in the future. But I got my brother-in-law. He wants a load of stuff, so
Yeah,
I'm
come on,
gonna
well,
be doing
mate.
some
The
stuff
ones you've
with
done
him.
there. So you drop your days now because of what we'll talk about.
Yeah,
next, mate,
yeah. So
Well, before we jump onto that, I think it'd be because it's otherwise we're going back in time. You've done some pretty epic challenges.
yeah,
Obviously, like maybe Adventurous. They probably don't like that word, but they are pretty. There's not many. You've done Marathon des Sables.
yeah,
Rode from Gran Canaria to Barbados.
yeah. That's right. Yeah,
Cycled from Bristol to.
yeah. Barcelona.
I was
yeah,
going to say something random in.
yeah.
Tiverton. Anyone, well, all of them are pretty epic, mate. Well, especially the Marathon des Sables. Well,
Yeah.
rowing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think sort of with a bit of reflection, I think, I was thinking about on the drive up, like what is it that's made me sort of take on some of these things? I think going back to, like being 19 and losing my dad, I was like, life's quite fragile. We haven't got long. I just want, I said this in conversation, maybe a few months ago with one of my friends, and I caught up with him a couple of weekends back, and I even forgot I said it, but he said, we all sat around eating, and I said, I want to squeeze every drop of life out, so, and I forgot I said it, but, it's good to have it, hear your words back at you, and it's very true. So I think with the MDS, I remember.
So just telling people what that is, you wouldn't know.
Oh, Marathon des Sables.
No, yeah.
It's 100. It varies year to year. I think when I did it was like 157, 157 miles, or give or plus a mile or two. It was the 30th anniversary I did it, but basically it's a foot race over. I think it's like 6 days.
All
6 days.
Sand dunes, isn't it? It's all,
across the Moroccan Sahara. And it's billed as the toughest foot race on earth. I mean, arguably there's some, in this day and age, there's Death Valley, there's plenty of others out there, but it's got legacy. It's been going for, I mean, I did it 2014, and it was the 30th anniversary then. So
carry your own water as well, didn't you?
Yeah. So the whole thing is self-supported. So all they do is they each stage. I mean, it balances out to a marathon a day, for the duration of the event. But like you have to carry everything you need outside of water. So food, sleeping system, anything you need to take with you outside of water, which you get given at checkpoints.
Which desert? Sorry.
The Moroccan Sahara, so like the northern part of the Sahara, and so going back, I remember being 14 and seeing, remember Eurosport? I seen some people with these little backpacks going across the desert. That's crazy. Nice. And then I didn't think nothing of it. And then I was in the last year that I was in the Corps, I remember seeing something else about it, and I trying to find the website, and I thought, that looks good, I'm going to give that a go. Because like you said about the SF stuff, you joined to do what SF are doing. And then I left the Corps without, and I always said, because I read Duncan Faulkner's, I was like, you should always give it a go, just to see if you fit into that slot, and I thought I'll give selection a go at some point once I'd hit my career points that I needed to do, and then I never ended up doing that. So I ended up joining the reserves to go, right, I'll join the reserves and I'll give selection a go that way. And then in that period, I was like, right, I'm gonna do the MDS. Basically, I saw a guy at a 10K and he had a finisher t-shirt on. And I'd initially tried to apply to do it. The website was just outdated and wasn't very good, wasn't accessible. Seen this guy and I said, how did you even get into it? He said, look, no, go on the website. And I went on and they'd updated everything. So then I got my missus, because I had to do a shooting course for marathons. They'd introduced that, and it was out in North Wales and no signal. So I got my missus to, as soon as the entries went live, a bit like Glastonbury, So again, I said,
it's a massive waiting list.
Yeah. So, and I said, can you just, as soon as it goes on, can you just try and register me? Here's my card and everything else. Just, put the deposit down. And yeah. So long and short is I got on and did it. And I mean, I've done a few ultras prior to that. And most of the things I've done in life, I read a book and then I'll go and do it. And while I was doing maritime, I read a book called The Ultra Marathon Man. My sister bought me for Christmas because I was just getting into my running, but not to that extent. Read the book, booked my first ultra, and I did it with one of the guys in the boxing club because we were shadow boxing, and we both said, "Oh yeah, I read that book," and we booked an ultra before I'd done a marathon. I was like, "I'm going to do that," you know. I mean, we done the 30 miler, so I knew I had that. I knew I had that in the tank, and we did a 69-mile race across Hadrian's Wall.
Oh.
So we did that. I think it was like 19 hours.
Sharif done. Did Sharif do that one?
No.
I thought he did something like that. Yeah, sorry, mate.
Yeah, so we did that, and then just planted the seed. Then it's like, right, well, you know, and then obviously did the 10Ks, chat to that bloke, and then went out and did it. And one of my main takeaways from that is it was hard, you know.
Just sand getting everywhere, mate.
Sand.
Like,
I mean, like it was. I mean,
like
my
loads
little
of chafing from that or not. That's what I was thinking.
No,
yeah.
just along. You know, you do any. I remember load of toenails fell off and stuff, and massive blisters all over my feet. But it's just, you can't help some of that. It's just time and feet, and just the nature of the environment. I wasn't too bad to get burnt or anything. No, I sort of covered myself up, and you know, it works in your favour. I got like sleeves, so I'd wet the sleeves, and that would obviously keep me cool then because it hit my radial pulse. So I was fine. You know, like the actual, you know, and I think like so you do like under a marathon. Just under a marathon, then you do like a marathon, and then day 4 is the big one. And ours was like 50, it might be 57 or 51 miles on like day 4, and you get like 30 hours to complete it. But yeah,
it was up and down dunes, right? It's not
yeah,
flat,
dunes, mountains,
like,
yeah. I think you go as high as Snowdon.
Wow.
On one of them, yeah. Yeah, it was a good experience, but we were like the rejects. So like everyone's on like Facebook making teams up and like, oh, we'll be a tent together and this, that, the other. And like we're a lot. I've done all these events, but I class myself as a runner, but I am, you know. But like turn up, and I was like, I don't want to talk to any of these people. They're not my cup of tea, you know. So I just, you know, probably may come across as arrogant, but it's just like I don't feel a connection with any of these people. You know, and until you go for experience with anyone, you haven't got that connection. So, you know, we flew over, and then literally we've got out the coaches, and like everyone's like sort of chatting to each other, you know, like in the little breaks, but you know, I wasn't really. And I guess same for the people in my tent. So we've got off at night, and then you if you have a look online, you see the pictures, and it's a bit like Burning Man, big circles of tents and all that. And they were just going like, well, these are the British tents, and they're like getting your teams, and they're dropping them off tent by tent. And then it was just like, we were just the last people left, like the motley crew that no one wanted. Oh, is us lot then, yeah? And then we got in, but it worked in our favour because there was only 6 of us, so we had more room in our tent. So yeah.
So you have the same tent every night when you
and that's your tent then, your 69 our tent was. And they're a real nice bunch of lads. I mean, we met up for food, like so the night before you set off, you have a cooked meal. And then from that morning, you're on your own then, or you have to live on your stuff until you finish, and then you go to a hotel at the end of it. And so we're having a meal, we're just chatting, and one of the guys, he just an accountant from sort of London way, I think. We're all talking about some of the training we did and just trying to sort of suss it out and just chat to each other, all quite sort of, I wouldn't say anxious, but you know, excited as well. And he was like, yeah, well, I did like, the longest one I've done is 16 miles. So like I did like a 50 miler, 30 miler, and then, you know, a marathon or whatever. Because you got to like do some qualifying rate. I mean, you're meant to, but he didn't. So anyway, he's like, I've done 16 miles. And we were like, everyone was like, what? And he goes, well, yeah, I bought a treadmill. For the garage. Just on a treadmill as well. Yeah, and he goes, and I fell off it and I hurt my ankle. So I spent all the money on the ticket because it ain't cheap. It's like $4,000. And I mean, I don't know what it is now, but it was $4,000 then. There and thereabouts. And he's like, oh yeah, I fell off. I didn't want to get myself injured and not do the race, so I just didn't train. And we were like everyone looked round like he completed it, right? Yeah. So, you know, and it's not to say it's not hard.
Just like, mindset, right?
Perhaps he's like the kid in school who said, oh, I'm done in revision.
Yeah. Well, he basically walked the whole thing, right? You know, and Ranulph Fiennes did it that year. Yeah. And so he basically was racing with him. Just walking, like, you know, and then after we were chatting, and he was a lovely bloke. I mean, because I paid for the ticket, and then people are always going, "Oh, who are you raising money for?" I mean, well, I ain't raising money. I'm doing it. And they said, well, we might as well raise money. So I done like a GoFundMe for the Royal Marines charity again.
Nice.
So I just put it up there because it didn't make a difference to me. It was paid for, but because I was doing it, people wanted to give money. So did that. And at the end of it, we were at this hotel. He's got like some bottles of champagne because he was doing quite well financially, I guess. And we were all chatting, and we all went, Did you ever think you wanted to do it? No, I always knew I was going to do it. And I took more from him, like because he just I'm
just like cuff it.
I'm doing this, like like in my head, there's no way I'm not completing this. And don't get me wrong, you get injured and everything else, just like any sporting event, or training, say you can get injured, but he had that unwavering belief in himself that he was going to get through it. And I was like, that's the biggest takeaway I got from some bloke who doesn't even do exercise, placed probably near last. He's still completed it. He's still got the medal the same as me.
Yeah, cool.
So that was a good experience, and that was like one of my main takeaways from that. And it opens the door, to whatever you can do next. And then when I was doing the maritime stuff, I always thought you can get anywhere in the world really if you've got a credit card and your passport, really. So I thought, well, I'm going to ride to Barcelona because I like Barcelona as a city. It's a cool city. So when I was up on the bridge wings, be out there for 4 hours in the middle of the night. I was like, what? So I just start sketching my kit list or what I'd do, where I'd go, and then I got it done. Got a bike and just went and did it.
Camping out on the way around, is that?
A couple of times, but I mean, when you go to Spain and stuff, it's more expensive. In some spaces in Spain, it's more expensive. It was like 30 quid for like almost like an Airbnb or just a motel room. Or it's the same to camp. I'm like, well, I'll have a shower and bed.
What were you using to navigate? Like you're just on old school maps?
I was using my phone. Right. I was using my phone on maps, and then when I got into a couple of days into Spain, it was just pissing it down, and my phone broke, so I had to buy a phone. I can't remember the name of the city now, but I went into just the Vodafone shop, tried there to get them to fix my phone or whatever. They wouldn't, so I just bought like a pay-as-you-go type one. Yeah. And then I just used that, just a little Android, and I just used that to navigate with Google Maps, and went through. And I was going through the Pyrenees for a little bit, and then, as it happens, like one of my mates was in a stag do just north of Barcelona, so I was like, if I cut down out of the mountains,
stop off for a stag do on the way.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I went to the stag do, and then rode back down, and then met my missus. My missus come out and met me in Barcelona. And we had a little free break in Barcelona. Just packed the bike back and I sold it. So when I got back, I was like, I've done it. I arguably would I do it again? I'll probably something along those lines. It's a bit of a freedom.
How long did that take?
2 weeks. I mean, I could, I didn't really push it. It was like a bike tour, really. It was just nice. And that was, although it wasn't technically physically hard, it was transformative because I had a lot of time by myself, and I was like, I know what I want. When I come back, like I had a direction in my life that I wouldn't have got from elsewhere,
Right, Jay, on to your next challenge, mate. We believe you single-handedly rode.
Well, that's what I tell people when I get older,
the circumference of the earth.
Yeah, so the row. So going back to, what we've said, about, read a book, and then it's sort of, there's normally, I imagine for most people, there's a moment, a spark, isn't there? So when I was doing maritime, there was a lad who'd done he'd rode the Atlantic. Well, he actually rode the Pacific. So our team leader was like, "Oh, do you know he's rode the Pacific?" And I was like, "Oh, really?" And it was like, luckily when we'd have like Scran, us three would be on at the same time, and it was mint to ask him questions about it. I was like, because it's just interesting. An accomplishment. So I started chatting to him about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've done the Atlantic a couple of times, and he rode the Pacific. So he went from Japan to San Francisco, and he done it as a pair, and it took nearly 6 months. But I only know this now because I've since read the book. He since wrote a book, but at the time he was trying to get some like a deal with Discovery to do like a little mini documentary about it. And then that sort of planted a seed there. And so just saying about it, and he was saying about it. He goes, like, he rode the Atlantic with his brother the first time. And then the second time he jumped on and, done it last minute. And, and so ended up doing it twice. And then that sparked into the Pacific. And I was just listening to some of these stories. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do that. And it's the whole, like 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So it'd be 2 hours of rowing, 2 hours off to sleep or whatever. And I thought, that's impossible. Like, how can you even do that? So off the back of that, I went and got James Cracknell, Ben Fogle, when they call it The Crossing, their book. So I read that, and I read that with no intention of doing it, but I was just interested to learn more about it. And it just seemed insane. And I put it to bed. I sort of read the book, put it to bed, and didn't really think anything more of it really until I had tattooed a chap and his brother. So I tattooed a boot neck, and his brother was doing a lot of videography and stuff, and he had a page on Instagram, and he took some. I gave him some t-shirts, and he took some pictures of the t-shirts for me. So they ended up following him, and they were following a couple of boot necks that were rowing. So this was around the time of tail end of COVID. So it was the end of 2020. They would during that sort of Christmas period, it showed their prep, and then it just showed them completing it. And so, of seeing his like coverage of them, I started following them. When they completed it, like gave a little donation, and then I kept my eye on their socials, and then it popped up in that, I think their story just said, if anyone fancies like a challenge, just shoot us an email. And I thought, it's something I've always, I literally sent him an email, just the interested to know, like, what are you talking about? What is there? Is there like, some shorter challenges? Like, do you build up to something like that? This, that, the other. So I sent him an email, and Brucey, the lad who replied, he was like, great to have you on board. I was like, what?
You're in.
And then I was like, he said, yeah, look, he just basically outlined, look, if you can get a team together, or if you've got a team in mind, basically you'd be looking to go from Gran Canaria to Barbados. We can help provide the boat and give you some guidance for training, this, that, the other. And I was like, whoa, a bit overwhelmed. It's just like from a quick email and a phone call. And then I was like, I hadn't said nothing to my missus, but I thought, planted a seed there. So I was like, all right. So so I sat down, and bearing in mind, I've got 2 children at this point. They're both young. But nonetheless, I've got two young kids, and so I said, look, right, this is what's happened. I messaged a bloke, and he said, great to, and she went, yeah, all right. I went, no, I had to show an email. I was like, he's been really forthright about sort of bringing people on to do it, and I went, all right. And then we were discussing it, and she went, look, and she just knows how I am, like I'm quite driven and determined. If I've got an idea of something, I'll push to make it happen. And so she said, look, if you want to do this, do it now. I said, I don't want you doing it in years to come when the kids are older. I said, like, there's less, because at the time I don't think the kids were in school, so there was less pressure in terms of transporting and because she was off work at the time with the kids anyway. A massive credit to her. I wouldn't be able to have done it without her. But she said, look, just do it, get it out your system. She knows I am. Like, if I want to do something, I'm going to push forward and do it. So yeah. And then I didn't have a team, and then the reason being is I was told at the time, like, you don't do it with people you like, because you may not be friends after, because you spend so much time in that closed environment that it can alter your friendship. There's a caveat to that, which I'll sort of come to. But so I was like, right, okay. And a few of my mates said, I wouldn't mind doing that, so I ain't doing it with you. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it with people I don't know. So when I was chatting to them, I said, I'll just join the team. I don't really care who I do it with. I'll just join the team. And then we got together. We made a team up. I mean, it's a lot more convoluted than that. Not convoluted, it's probably the wrong term, but there's a lot more to it about how we formed the team. We had members dropping out. Not for any fault of their own. The idea was to have 2 veterans and 2 serving members. But just because of the way, the military hierarchy wouldn't release people because it wasn't military. And so there was a load of that going on. So in the end, we amalgamated 2 teams. but and made one because we had trouble, getting all the guys together. I did like I have got a little blog sort of outlining it in a lot more detail, but it's more so for my memories. I've done it. I've done it because people ask. Probably hardly anyone reads it, but it's for me to read in 20 years time, to remind me.
A book out of that? Is there enough to make a book?
No, don't worry about it. But I think it's just like I'm trying to make a habit of writing things down because time taints everything. So, I probably some of the stuff I said today isn't probably 100% accurate, but it's how my brain has chose to remember it. So if I do try, I have been trying to write things down, but, that's that anyway. So we managed to get a team together. We're raising money for the Royal Marines charity. And then, we set off, what was it, 2021. So the following year so we literally had 6 months. And I remember thinking, oh God, it's so much, I'm piling pressure on myself to do the fundraising, to make sure I put money aside to make sure my missus is all right, while I'm away and all these things, and I didn't really get any training done.
I was going to say, what were you training on land, on like concept 2s or on the water?
I was lucky enough that someone from a local gym, they said, look, what do you want, a free membership? They heard about it because I got it in the paper and they heard about it. So do you want a free membership for the 3 months or whatever it is on the run up to you leaving or concept 2? I said, I'll have a concept 2. So I got a garage gym set up. I did most of my training there. So I was getting on there and doing some rowing. I joined a local sea rowing club just for like a bit of an intro session. They just gave me some pointers, but it's slightly different how they do it. It's a 4-man boat with, like just you got 1 oar per side. But I took away some decent fundamentals from there, which I applied on the concept 2. I looked online, and for the best part, from chatting to people, it's about building a good strength base. And then the endurance comes when you're doing it. There's no way you can't get fit doing it, So I put a bit of weight on. I was eating what I wanted, less running, just more weights, a little bit of rowing, and then but the only thing is, nothing married up, so I could get together. And because of the way we'd all be mixing our teams and we'd have nothing really firm. I didn't get out on the boat. I didn't get out on the boat until we got to Gran Canaria.
Jeez.
Yeah, so. Which was quite interesting, So we got there, loaded the boat up with all the supplies, and then got out on the water. And initially, I was like, I remember just the first day we went out on the water, gone into the cabin. We said, we'll take turns getting in the cabin to get used to just being in the cabin. And I remember getting in the cabin. I was like, texting my missus, I feel sick already. I hadn't been on there an hour. She was laughing. I was like, But I mean,
sea legs in the end, though, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, what you do is you take motion sickness tablets. Yeah. I mean, the lads that I did it with, so I'll go back. It was a 4-man team. Yeah, so that's So I sort of skipped that part. It's a 4-man team. Yeah. So I wanted to do it as a 4-man team as opposed to a 2 or an individual one, because in my head, all I wanted to do was get it done and get home. Like my thing was like, it's about having an idea of what I'm doing, like the green lid and everything else. For me, it was like, I'm flying away to go to Gran Canaria to row home. Although I'm going to Barcelona, I am the more work I put in is getting me home quicker to see my family, and that was my mindset. And doing it as a 4-man team would enable me to do that quicker. It's still the same sort of challenge and everything else. So that goes back to, with it being a 2-man team, you've got no way to vent your frustrations, and that's where I think relationships can be really strained, because there's no comedy relief from a third person perspective. Yeah. So I mean, I talk to other guys who have done the rows and talk to them about their experiences, and some of them talk to me about guys are arguing and stuff like that. I'm really lucky. We never argued as a team. There was enough, banter, or even if you were a bit bent up about something, you could get it out there, have a laugh, and you move on.
A pair, then? Is that
so you rowing a pair.
So 2 of you resting in the same cabin?
No, so we had one. You have a front cabin and a back cabin, at least in the ocean rowers that we use. Yeah. So you have one in the front, one in the back, and then we swapped a few times, but like basically swapping your pairs.
Right.
And it was a real good experience. Again, I've been, there is a lot of luck. Like weather-wise, we set off really good. How we organised it was like it was a 3 hours on, 3 hours off, because we weren't really pushing for a time. We just wanted to get through it. Yeah. You know, 3 hours does mean a lot longer. I mean, imagine we're rowing for 3 hours is a long time, and that last hour is always the longest. You know, doesn't matter. It's always a long time. But then what we did is between the hours of 9 and 3, we chopped that in half. So we do an hour and a half on, hour and a half off, because the sun was hotter. You know, and it just broke up the day, and we'd look forward to those short, because that hour and a half felt so short. And although your break was short, it was, you know, and you couldn't sleep really in the day because it would be too hot. It's too hot, and I spent majority of the time in the back cabin, so you're just going into the sun. So when you're trying to sleep in the sort of mid to late afternoon, it's impossible in a greenhouse. So hard, like to, you know, But yeah, we never had to put the power anchor out. So the power anchor is if you're rowing against the wind and it's pushing you backwards, put an anchor, like a underwater parachute effectively, which holds you in place.
Rolling back.
Yeah, but we never had to use that, which was really good. And I think, like, you know, it was a good experience. Yeah, and like everyone had like different sort of levels of anxiety going out, and I never really, you know, when you look at it, you know, with a little bit of hindsight, it's just a little boat, and you're not in a shipping route, you know, because you don't really see any boats. You go ages without seeing boats. It was good towards the end, because you do see a few sailing boats because of the way the trade winds work. So that, you know, they'll take a similar route of passage. So you know, I think we spoke to about 3 or 4 boats along the way, awesome. Which was pretty good.
You see a lot of wildlife.
Yeah, we saw loads of dolphins. And like, I mean, there's like 2 sort of key sort of, you know, again, the things that will stick with me it took us 48 days, but and like many things, you know, everything becomes just like a cheap cartoon background. It just repeats itself. So effectively, you know, there's nothing to look at. Yeah. But the journey itself, well, there's nothing to look at. In my head, I've got like, this was the flat, fast bit. This was the mountainous bit when the waves are rough, and this is where we saw that. So it's got its own little journey within itself. But on the face of it, it's just the horizon. You know, the horizon, sunset and sunrise. But I think as we were coming down, it's probably about maybe 10, 15 days in, coming down the coast of Africa, and as the winds pick up, the sea picked up, and the sea state, it was big, like, you know, and the wind's pushing us. So we want to keep going south, but it's pushing us west. But because of the way that we had to just sort of go with it, because otherwise you're going side on to these massive, you know, this massive swell. And I think it was down as it's down as like 3-4 meters, but it's not. That's like the average. And like you're sitting on this boat, which is effectively sitting on the floor, looking up at the swell that's as big as a house, just coming towards you. And obviously you roll up and over it, or you roll down it, you know, if it's good. And I remember like opening the cabin door to get out, and we didn't have any auto steering. We had to steer manually. And just the week before we left, the repeater, which tells you which direction to go in, so you can just like a compass on a LED screen, broke. So we had to use a
old school compass.
Yeah, old school compass sat between our legs, and we have to steer like that, like with your feet. So you have to steer with your feet as you're rowing, and so you're rowing like actually no, you're like this. Sorry, yeah. So you have to turn your feet left or right. So you're doing squats for like 4 hours, like on the side, like that, and checking just you know, and accounting for waves. So when it's rough, you've got to, you know, because if you just keep going, you can get rolled and everything else. And I was in that position. I'm in this position with like little to no experience of like steering this boat.
Mate.
I was scared. Yeah. You know, I was scared. You know, the size of the swell, and you know, it was all right. You know, it wasn't too bad. You know, the benefit of that is time went fast because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I'm not thinking about getting off shift or anything else. I'm just thinking like, I've just got to do this right. And that was like the first day. And then I remember the second day I was more confident. I think the third day, or over the end of the second day and into the third day, I was enjoying it. And that's that stretch and transformation of personal development. I thought that was the biggest thing I took away from that, being so scared. And then like we're putting on, because we put on either audiobooks or music. I remember just putting some good music on. The sun was setting. It was still just as rough, but it just felt like a different experience, and it was fun. It was that was like one of the big ones. And
so
then
must have had some hard days as well, though.
Yeah, I mean the hot like the ones towards the end, because you're hot. There was no current, no real no wind, nothing to really assist you, and we're like the days kept staying the same. It was like 10 days till we finish, because they're like rough, based on your movements, and it just kept staying like.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And I was
like a full summit.
Yeah, I'm trying to really push the lads to do it, but I got to be careful, because then you got conflict. Because I'm up for it. I want to get back. My friends were looking to meet me in Barcelona, in Barbados, but the more it pushed right, the flights got too expensive, so they couldn't do it. And and I was like, right, that was like more of a tougher time, because we were so close, like less around over a week out, and it just kept stretching out. But another time that was real good, and it done. Just like, when you go like, I mean, even like around here, you've got beautiful scenery around here, or you go up to the Highlands, or you go anywhere around the world, there's, real beautiful scenery. You take a picture and you go, well, that's crap. You know what I mean? It was New Year's Eve, and it sounds fake, but it was you imagine we're in the middle of the Pacific, and it was like being on a pond. It was flat as an ice rink, like that. A little bit of a mist, like into the distance. Sky was beaming with stars, and there was bioluminescence.
Oh,
so as we're rowing, there's like
going through
the oars. But it wasn't like super strong, but it was strong enough that it was lighting up, and the dolphins popped out, and I was like,
"That's cool." Mate.
There's even if I got a camera out, you never
do it justice.
Yeah, never do it justice. So I'm really grateful to have that experience, and I'll never be able to replicate it. Never, even if I did, it would do it a disservice. Yeah. The fact that I'm glad I never got it on footage.
How long did it take you? How many miles?
48 days, and it's like 3,000 miles. So yeah, and we started off really well, and then the sea state changed, which slowed us down, and at one point we had
also just getting to the end of it. That's all you want.
Yeah,
you're not caring about the time.
Yeah. Initially, you think, "Oh, we're doing all right. It will break a record," and then as time goes by, you're like, that just sort of stretches out.
Kept in touch.
Yeah. Still speak to a few lads. Mitch, one of the lads, he was talking about one of, because the lads, because we were listening to different audiobooks. You have like a little structure. So in the daytime, it depended on your pair, but we were listening to Lord of the Rings or Terry Pratchett and stuff in the day. Some podcasts in the evening, and then some music as well either side of that. And but the other lads would listen to a lot of like Goggins, all these different guys, Ross Edgley, all these
keep you going.
They were listening to it. But you couldn't help but not listen to it, because it's like a little plywood door, so you'd hear everything. So you sort of experience the book slightly, but they were just talking about what their next adventure, and they were at different stages, right? All the lads were 10 years younger than me. Like, all I wanted to do was get home, see my family, and like people were talking about their next adventure. I'm like, I've got what I want. This is and it was less transformative as an experience as a bike ride, a jolly bike ride. It's just because the time, I think it's just where I was in my life. I think I was happy just having that experience and that be that. But one of the lads, he was in the merchant navy, so he wasn't a bootneck. He was in the merchant navy that worked alongside bootnecks and SBS, and then he's since now an officer in the navy now, because he basically with all the interactions was like, I want to do it. He had a job for life with what he was doing, but he didn't feel he was achieving anything. He wanted to go somewhere, so that changed his life. One of the other lads, Oscar, I was partnered with. I was partnered with. He's now studying physics in university. So he's born in the UK, but all his family's from New Zealand, or live in New Zealand. So he's moved back to New Zealand. He's got girlfriends, settled down. I think he might even be engaged, and he's in university studying physics. So for him, it was like a crossroads point, because a lot of the other two lads had just left the Corps, and Mitch, he's done the maddest thing. He swam the Channel, rode from Calais to India, and then on a bike, and then ran.
I've seen he shared it recently.
Yeah.
A few people mention him.
Yeah, and then he ran from India to Kathmandu, and then summited Everest.
Too much time was on.
Yeah. So I mean, fair play to him. He put it into action. You know, and
That's mega.
yeah, and I've tattooed him, and I'll be tattooing him again soon at some point. So it's gonna be good to.
What was your body like at the end of that?
I just leaned out, really.
Were you in bits though, like from being in that position?
I was quite lucky. I think like I was told certain things what you should do. I mean, you're naked most of the time. You get sores. I mean, you get splashed by water, and it's because you get like a little bit of water splashed on, say, like your side, and then it's like it like grates. Just on because we got like like sheepskin covers. That gets wet, and it literally rub it into a sore within half hour, 40 minutes. So you've got to literally wash everything down.
Especially, I suppose, if the tides are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But I was lucky. I had a couple of little issues at the start. It wasn't too bad. The other lads started to fall apart at the end, so they were struggling really. Where I think, like with my body, where I had it a little bit earlier, my body sort of recovered from it, and then you sort of like even your hands. You start off, your hands are hanging out, and then you just end up with massive calluses all over your hands, and you're fine. I wore gloves at the start, and then I'd transition between gloves and bare hands to the point I didn't wear the gloves because you just eased into it. Yeah.
Mate, the tech side now, you've transitioned into a completely different space.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a pretty humble guy, so you probably won't big this up as much as you should or could. Describe to us what you're doing now, mate. I've kind of I know you're still tattooing, but
you drop days down. So
drop days down now, so I can. I work 3 days a week at the minute, so I'm just trying to dedicate more time to this. This project, I've called it LAPP, right? I'll go into why I've called it that at the start, but so after coming back from the row this summer, I was spending with my kids. I was doing some tattoo designs over the weekend, and my son wanted to play with me, so I was all right, I'll put down what I'm doing. I said, actually, why don't we integrate something together? Because he was reading like a little booklet about like that his school that he was joining in September, given into him, and it was literally A4 folded paper, just talking about the daily routine at school, and he loved reading it. So I was like, right, let's make a book. Because if he doesn't need a big glossy book, if he's happy reading, I can make that and print it out. So what I did is I started taking some pictures of him in like some action poses, and we built up like a rough storyline, doing it, and then he helped me rub out all the background for his picture, and then we put him into like just using Google Images. I put him into like sort of Jurassic Park type esque adventure. Basically, he goes out, gets treasure, comes back, and then printed out, made a book. And he was enjoying reading it. I enjoyed making it, and then it sort of sparked an idea. I was like, how can I do this for more people? Because it was fun, and although there's personalised books at the time, which he had a few, but they're real vague, real generic sort of type books. I was like, how can I do this? And I thought, I can't do this for everyone. And this sort of thought process happened over a couple of weeks and months, chatting with people as well. And then I came to sort of the idea of, I'll make an app, because then you put your kid's face into the app, into a story. And then that way you don't need a physical book, or maybe in future you can print these books out. And then, and then it was like, I found like a company that helped sort of take ideas off the ground, discuss what I had in mind. Because I mean, in that interim, I'd made up some rough sort of phonics books, used Fiverr to get some illustrations made. And then I was like, well, I need to try and cover up all the skin, because, it needs to be accessible to everyone. Yeah. So we did it was just a story about a kid going outside and playing in the mud with their dog. They got gloves on and a rain jacket, and you just drop the face on. So I took that to this ideas company, and they helped sort of go through the process of like the user journey, how it would go about it. Because I made some in prior to that, I'd made up sort of how I visualize like a main menu would look and a profile, and they'd have all. The idea is you take a load of pictures, and which is what it is now. So you take you take 7 pictures of your child, side profiles, smiling, sad, different emotions. You select their skin tone, and then you put in their name and their gender, and then that gets implemented into a story. So with it, like we're talking to the guys with the first thing, they helped sort of give it a bit of a brand identity and an idea of a user journey. And when I was discussing, about the changing this, to actually being able to change the skin tones of the individuals. They said, "Oh, we won't be able to do that." I'm like, "Well, it's not really. If you can't do that, then you're not going to bring what I."
There's always a way in there.
Yeah, exactly. So then I basically got in touch with a load of different developers. You know, I had a number of meetings with a couple of different guys, and I settled with the company who I'm working with now, the Red Sea, who have developed everything up to this point. And yeah, and it was just sort of start creating different stories, you know, the personalized stories for the individual. So yeah, I mean, it's a completely different environment. You know, again, so I'm learning something new, pushing myself in a different way.
How far along the line is it?
It's in the App Store now. It's in the App Store, yeah. So it's currently only on like iOS,
yeah,
for the minute, because the research I said, you know, I looked into, it said many more people, in terms of if you have a tablet, most people generally, you know, own a Apple device. Yeah. So I thought that was my route I went down. So yeah, just
so I suppose the product's built now,
mm-hmm.
and you're obviously marketing this in a completely new domain that none of us have marketed in before. Of how you grow that product in that sort of new space. That's where you are, kind of.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been working alongside some educational professionals, you know, taking guidance from them. I've had a couple of different consultation meetings, and trying to build a wide repertoire of stories.
I was going to say, how many stories is it at the moment?
I've got 20.
All right, so you can
20,
you put your
21.
kids into the 20 different stories.
So there's a small number of stories that are based around just sort of basic phonics style reading, and then there's various adventure style stories, like, you know, going on an adventure with the tooth fairy. You know, to like sort of implementing sort of moral values, you know, which we need in society. So I'm talking about honesty and friendship and the values in them. And then also what I've done from off the back of these consultations, I've gone. I'm starting to lean into more emotional resilience angle. So there's a number of stories talking about dealing with anxiety for young people. So one of the stories, for example, is like a child has their first experience, school play, and they feel really nervous, get all tongue-tied, get upset. So it just talks about doing like 5-finger breathing, you know, and just sort of, and there's a lot of there's a big thing now within primary schools about zones of regulation. So how to bring yourself down through the zones of regulation, so you're in a good state to learn and sort of take on life. Another one is like I've got friends within who have got children within the spectrum, and they see a massive benefit to getting their children to physically see themselves in these situations. So one of the things I'm going to be doing moving forward from this is what they call social stories. So it could be getting the bus or like getting a plane. Yeah. What is the process to getting, so you're going to have to queue up, you're going to have to go through security. So for children that,
Smart.
It's children that really struggle with new experiences. I mean, it's applicable to everyone. I mean, they do this stuff in primary schools anyway, and they're quite popular books, and they don't really have a storyline. It's just real life events, So putting children that are stuck on routine,
into
them. So they can visualize themselves, and it's rather than visualize, they can physically see it. So
is it to a particular age group, age range you're looking at for
like 3 to 8 generally. Yeah. I mean, like talking to some of because the reading levels in the UK have dropped.
Yeah.
And talking to some of the primary school teachers, they see value in ages past 8, down to the fact that there's different educational needs. But my primary focus is that, because if I spread myself too thinly, I'm a one-man band effectively. I'm a one-man band effectively. So I'm trying, like I said, that's why I'm taking these extra days off of work to try and
what's the vision for it, mate? Where you're trying to get it out to? Is a particular sector or space you're trying to get into?
Well, I mean, we looked at I did look at sort of the schooling and having discussions within that environment, but it's a much more layered and protected environment. Well, rightly so, you know, it's an educational system. I'm in the process that the product's out there.
Yeah.
You know, I need it in front of people. I need feedback. I need people using it, and I want it to be improved as best as possible, so people will use it and see value in it. I mean, like as an I guess I don't even see myself as an entrepreneur, but I am. You know, like obviously there is like I want it to do well because I've invested a lot of money financially into it. I put a lot of my time. It's a product that's been 3 years in the making, but I wanted to see it have a value in society, you know, because there's loads of brain rot on you know, like on devices.
I'm sure it will, mate. The way you've hit everything else in life, it's only going to go one way, mate. Hopefully in a year's time, when you sat back here, you'll be our richest friend. But,
I think it's like it takes years to become an overnight success, doesn't it? You know, and people see the end product and then they make an assumption of how you may have got there.
it's kind of a perfect thing for you as well, like it's storytelling, like tattoos are storytelling.
Yeah.
Kind of like, and today, mate, you've been a great storyteller. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I in my head, I'm rattling on like.
Oh, mate, it's quality. Where can we, so find, just so people are listening, we'll put a link in the description when we put this out. But
it's in the LAPP store. You'll find it under LAPP.
LAPP.
Yeah, library in your lap. The idea, LAPP's quite a general name, but where it came from is when I was trying to brainstorm an idea with my wife about what we could call it. Rather than calling it sort of long-winded, you know, that was only really accessible in the English market. We thought, well, LAPP is basically there was a lending library at the nursery, and it said there is no app for your lap.
Oh, nice.
And then we were like, that's what we'll call it then, LAPP, library app in your lap. So, and then, you know, the idea is if it does well in the UK and you know, hopefully the US or whatever, English-speaking sort of nations, then it's a simple shift. Just change the language. Yeah, change the language. You know, and you know, makes various stories that are applicable for everyone. Again, it's all about accessibility. You know, so everyone feels included within that storytelling.
Mate, when you do make it, don't forget your friends. You're on the tattoo in front, and
I'll still be tattooing you. Whatever happens, I'll you know, that's definitely one of my first loves.
Normally drags you up here with your machine at the same time.
Yeah, well, I'll do that again.
Brilliant.
yeah, thank you, mate. It's been
thank you, boys. Thank you. It's
really
nice to sort of
really enjoyed that, mate. Actually,
watch how it gets marketed, mate, and see you push it out there.
Yeah. Just put myself out there and put the product out there.
Brilliant.
If anyone's interested, they can get in touch with me.
Right.
cheers mate. Cheers,
lovely. Thank you, boys.
Thanks for the chat, mate.